In honor of Denver's decriminalization of magic mushrooms. Doctors of Reddit, what, if any, is your best story of patients on hallucinogenics? In a busy urban ED, one unkempt looking man with altered mental status sits calmly and tiredly in a bed along the wall in the hallway. As I walk by, he grabs me, with a worried look on his face, and says in the most classic stoner voice, "Hey, man. Why does the time on that clock keep changing?" Me. That's what it's supposed to do. Patient. Ooh yeah. Laughs. Still one of my most memorable encounters. I can only imagine he's sitting there like, "Hey time. Could you chill for a minute? Can't it just be 3:52 for a while? What's the rush?" Had a friend become impatient with mushrooms once. He took an eighth, and an hour later decided they weren't very strong. So the most logical thing to do would be eat his other eighth. Cut to 2 hours later, and he is parked on top of a parking garage. Tried to drive across town when they kicked in and he immediately realized his FPP up. He tried to wait it out, but after being abandoned by everyone else I wasn't around. No way in hell would I have left the poor guy on 7 grams of shrooms to his own devices, and he decides he needs help. So he calls 911. While on the phone he wants to be as honest as possible. So he tells them about his .22 caliber rifle behind the seat of his truck. Only it comes out as, "There's a gun in the car." He says he was tripping and sweating so badly it was July. The next thing he remembers is hearing a tink 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 and looking up to being surrounded by police. Guns drawn and ready for anything. Friend isn't a danger though. So they get him in an ambulance and give him charcoal to induce vomiting. The rest of the night is a blur for him, and he wakes up cuffed to the bed. They ask him if there's anyone he can call for a ride, and he tells them his mom is a nurse who works on the 2nd floor. Apparently while tripping he kept telling them to go upstairs and get mom. So they all have a chuckle realizing his mom really was upstairs. Dude, I couldn't tell you where my left hand was on 7 grams of shrooms, much less my mother. If I ate 7 grams of shrooms I wouldn't even be able to grasp the concept of hands. I once ate 7 grams of mushrooms. It was all fun until I got struck by lightning and was electrocuted. Turns out that my phone was on vibrate. Oh my god, I just died laughing. Peeping same. Only because I once fell through a floor for 30 minutes and when my spouse wanted to phone my best friend I flipped my speed because I thought my phone was some kind of cosmic witchcraft cube. What's funny to me is how you know exactly what a cosmic witchcraft cube is immediately, as if you've seen so many of them. BTW. When any of you guys take shrooms, do you ever hear that female voice that guides you? The one time I took shrooms just 1 gram I definitely heard her. I also mentioned it to my friend who confirmed he can also sometimes hear her on shrooms. I had a female voice tell me that I was a fetus that was not viable with life. And 1,000 or so years into the future, they had sufficiently advanced far enough to solve whatever genetic ailment I had, and would be fixing and birthing me. In the meantime, all I had to do was wait, and live my life over and over again. My entire life until that point had been the process of my brain trying to pass the time, and no one, and nothing that I had done or seen or heard, had been real. I realized I was a nerd. I had invented Star Wars, my girlfriend, my house. All of it. Every time I lived my life, I got just a little bit farther. I was stuck in a loop that seemed to get a little bit longer each time. When it finally got to present day in 1,000 or so years, I would be in real life. Until then, I was floating in pitch black nothingness with my mind to fill the void. This was all after I first realized I was a small rat-like creature living on a planet. I had eaten something poisonous and was in the process of dying, and needed to evacuate my bowels and I would be okay. that lasted for the entire evolutionary cycle of a few 100,000 years. Pro tip: don't ever try to sleep off mushrooms. Also, if you make mushroom tea, don't chug it, don't re-brew it, and don't chug it again. From the first drink of tea, the walls were melting in less than 15 minutes. To scary as fpeep in 25. And fpeep this. I gotta go to bed in less than an hour. Deleted 0. 5670 to this is all nonsense 89,098. It was nice of him to offer to share. At least that gives them a sample for the lab. To make sure it's actually what he thinks it is. And not mixed with whatever. Right. A sample for the lab. I'll meet you out back in 20. Undefined. Me. At the lab. Yep. Definitely acid. I had a guy who was freaking out thinking he was going to die because he thought he had eaten too many hallucinogenic mushrooms. He went online and saw that sometimes patients are given activated charcoal to soak up the mushrooms in the stomach. Not entirely true BTW. So he goes outside and starts chowing down on charcoal briquettes that he has in his garage for grilling. After about a dozen he realizes, holy speep, I'm eating charcoal briquettes. Now he is really freaking out, so he grabs his dog as the thinks he is never coming back to his house and drives himself to the ED. He parks out front. Walks into Tridge with the pup black charcoal all over his face and hands and says, I need a doctor and someone to watch my dog when I die. That's actually really considerate of the dog. If he was worried that nobody else would show up to take care of it in time following his demise. Yeah. Dog was a bro for driving him to the ED. Nurse here. Used to work the night shift in a very small, rural ED in North Carolina. We had a couple in their 20s get picked up the local police. They were found in their car stopped on the train tracks looking very lost and confused. They had somehow made it from Raleigh and were attempting to get to the beach. We don't know exactly when they decided to take the LSD. So they're brought into the ED for an eval before they're let go. This being rural NC, no one had a clue about how to handle this type of situation. We basically gave them IV fluids, put them on cardiac monitors, and tried not to stimulate them too much. They were extremely polite, and since I was the closest in age to them and had some experience with recreational drugs, I did my best to engage them. As I was starting an IV on the male partner, I asked how he was feeling. Very safe, he replied. His pupils were as wide as saucers. I miss that job sometimes. This is actually really sweet. I had a patient who had taken an ungodly amount of Benadryl in a failed suicide attempt. A lot of people think that since it makes you drowsy, a bunch of it might be able to kill them in their sleep. Instead of killing them though, Benadryl basically gives you absolutely terrifying hallucinations for like 24 hours or more and then leaves you with the worst multi-day hangover you have ever had in your life. He would not stop yelling and screaming about that damn cat poking its head out of the ceiling tiles every single time I left the room. He also had short bursts of thinking he was covered in bugs and I would find him stripped naked and yelling into the wall. Peeping ceiling cat. He sees you every time. He was very upset that we had put him in the cat room. Did you tell him you had no choice? You had to place him right, meow? I am a medic. Was working a concert in Chicago at Northerly Island a few years back for Fish Fest. Get a call for a male with his face in the ground. Find a shirtless 20-something-year-old with his pant undone and digging his face into the sand. I get next to the guy and tap his shoulder. Say, sir, do you know what's going on? Are you okay? To which he responds in the most classic stoner voice, "Yow, know what's going on, man?" And digs his face back in the sand with the stoniest of smiles you can imagine. We coax him out of the sand pit and he tells us he took 10 Just 10. Couldn't remember what of. Just 10. And honestly 10 is bad number if anything. Lol. 10 tabs of acid. 10 grams of weed. 10 grams of mushrooms. 10 shots. 10 heroines please. So we let him sit in the drunk tank with the rest of the tripped out goons. God bless their trippy little hearts. Yow know what's going on, man? UHH. Speep. I never really thought about it that way. Proceeds to lay down next to the guy.